So I'm starting a little late today because I went onto the wrong site. It's Richard from Great Grog here, Friday evening tasting. Sorry, I'm 5 minutes late. We're doing 3 wines from South Africa. We've got a wine from Indaba, Chenin Blanc, and then we've got Lemberg's Blanc de Noir, a rosé, and then we've got Indaba's Merlot, all 3 South Africans, all reasonably humbly priced, well, middle priced. So it's £9.10 for the Indaba Chenin, £9.99, £10 for the Blanc de Noir, and to £9 for the Indaba Merlot. Okay, poured myself a little glass of this. Thing about Indaba Chenin, okay, this is not oaked, so this is stainless steel tank fermented. It is quite pale coloured, so the colour in white wines will come from a bit of age, so that's not old. This is a 2018 vintage, so no colour from the age. Also, it's stainless steel tank fermented, so the main fermentation happens in stainless steel tanks rather than oak barrels, and oak barrels give colour, so there is no colour from stainless steel, so it's pale coloured. And also Chenin Blanc, the grape variety, doesn't give a lot of colour to a wine either, so there's a couple of things about the colour there. Give it a wee spin about. It's a really fruity style, so tropical fruit, kind of ripe apples maybe, I don't know, whatever you think of that. This is made by brewer Rats, who is from the Rats family winemaking. He's a famous winemaker in South Africa, but he's making the Indaba label, and he's sourcing these grapes from 3 main areas. So it's Paarl and Swartland and in Stellenbosch. So he's picking from family farmers who are contract growers to him, and then he assembles it in the winery in Swartland. So spin it about and have a sniff. You had a sniff. Nice clean flavours. Yeah, it really makes you want to drink it. So nice fruity type style white wine. And have a little slurp. Wash it all the way around your mouth. Okay, think about your tongue and what's happening in different bits of your tongue. In the middle of the tongue is the fruit, and on the sides there is the acidity. So this wine doesn't have a lot of acidity. It has enough acidity to keep it fresh. But the thing about South African wines is because they're a warm climate, the grapes really don't retain a lot of acidity because it's so warm. For instance, grapes in Scotland have masses of acidity because it rains a lot. It's not sunny. So the grapes tend to not have a lot of sugar and they have masses of acidity. Whereas in a warm climate like South Africa, you tend to get much more sugar and a lot less acidity. So, but it has enough to make it nice and fresh. And so fruit in the middle of the tongue and acidity on the sides. Have another little slurp. Okay, kind of tropical fruits. I don't know if you've got any suggestions as to what kind of fruits you think it is. I mean, maybe ripe apples, but I'm kind of more heading down kind of pineapples and that sort of fruit there. Couple of things about this wine. Okay, I was mentioning the acidity there. There's one way, if there was too much acidity, you can do a second kind of fermentation in wines, and it's called a malolactic fermentation. It's the changing of malic acid, which is green apple acidity, really tart acidity, into lactic acid, which is milk acidity, which is soft and creamy type acidity. So if you're in an area like South Africa, you really wouldn't want that to happen because you don't want the wine to become less fresh, less acidic. So you actually stop that, and you stop that by filtering the wine. So this wine is, as I mentioned, stainless steel tanks, and they actually leave it on the lees, that is the dead yeast cells that drop to the bottom of the tank for 5 months, and that gives it a little bit more texture and a little bit more body. So medium bodied, dry, fruity. I'm looking at my residual sugar, how much sugar is left in the wine after the yeast has consumed the sugar. It's 2 grams per litre. Now 2 grams, tiny little bit of sugar. You can't really taste 2 grams. So this is bone dry. There is no sugar left after the fermentation. The yeast has consumed all the sugar, so which is a good thing. Okay, you happy with that one? Finish the glass. yeah, it's nice, fruity, fresh. Probably this is a good Friday night quaffing wine. It's an excellent kind of day-to-day, during the week kind of wine. Equally, you could go against macaroni and cheese. Nice, simple, easy drinking, nothing too heavy. Don't go with too much flavour. Actually, it's something that would be quite good with it's kind of spicy foods, because it is quite juicy and fruity, and fruity whites go really well against spicy food. So if you're reaching for curry or Thai, or if you're getting a carry out from a curry house tonight, or a Chinese or a Thai, Ting Thai caravan, they're doing carry outs, that would be a really good washer downer for Thai food. Okay, happy with that? We'll move on to the second wine, which is Lemberg Rosé. So Lemberg Rosé, it's a Blanc de Noir. That means, Blanc de Noir means a white wine from red grapes. Now, it's patently not a white wine, but that's the point that they're trying to make. So this is made from 2 red grapes. It's made from Grenache and Syrah. And a synonym of Syrah is Shiraz. The Aussies call it Shiraz. Shiraz is the oldest grape variety in the world, and comes from the town of Shiraz in northern Iran, near Tehran. And it's really old, ancient grape variety. And the French just call it Syrah, but it is the same grape variety. And the Grenache is Grenache Noir, which also goes into Côte de Rhône, also goes into Riojas, and a load of stuff in Spain. So it's a really kind of popular grape variety. They make this, I'll open this one, turn the wee collar, pour yourself a little glass. They make this from red grapes, so Noir is the red grapes, and they make it by taking the skins away from the juice. And the Shiraz they bring in, the Syrah they bring in, and they immediately press it. So they put it into a wine press and squeeze the grapes. And the juice that comes out is transparent. So hence the Blanc de Noir, black grapes, but it's a white wine. They then take the Grenache grapes, which they'll pick slightly before the Syrah, and they'll separate that, and they'll put that into a different tank, and they leave the skins in contact with the juice for 2 hours. Just 2 hours. Normally with rosé wines, you would leave it in for maybe 12, maybe even 24 hours. But in this case, just 2 hours. Then they put that juice straight into a wine press and squeeze that juice with the skins, and squeeze it, and the juice comes out really pale. In fact, it'll be a little bit more dark than this, but then they put it into the transparent or the white Syrah juice afterwards. So they separate, I'll start that again. They separate them, ferment them separately, and then they'll blend them after they've finished the fermentation. So really pale coloured, super pale. It's almost barely rosé at all. 2 hours skin contact is really a small amount. Spin it about. Fruity, a little bit of red fruits there. Got on the palate, delicate, a little bit of red fruits, tiny little bit of red strawberry berries, acidity on the sides, really fresh, nice fruit, really juicy. That's a not a rainy night in Edinburgh kind of rosé. It's a kind of nice, sunny, warm garden rosé. So this is, I should have said, Lemberg are based in Tulbagh in South Africa. And Tulbagh is about 70 miles north of Cape Town. So you come out of Cape Town, go along to Stellenbosch, up through Paarl, and then Tulbagh is the next town up. Quite a warm climate. Goes to kind of 30, 35 degrees in the summer. Not as warm as the wines we were tasting last week, which were from Portugal, inland in Portugal. Goes into the 40s. So it's a little bit cooler. They get breezes coming down off the hills, and they get a bit of coastal effect as well. So a little bit of wind coming off the sea, and that keeps it a little bit cooler in summer. The other thing about South Africa at night, it gets quite cool. So at night time, it goes down to about 16 degrees, and that kind of swap in temperature from 30 odd during the day down to 16 at night helps build up the acidity and keeps it fresh and keeps the fruit really fruity. in the wine. It retains the fruit in the wine. So cool fermented. They try and keep the temperature of the fermentation down, and that again preserves the flavour. It's a really good juicy glugging rosé. So there you go. Is that happy with that? Any questions? My assistant Fraser will hit me with any questions you have over the wines. So Blanc de Noir is a white wine made from black grapes. Another more famous, you think Blanc de Noir is a kind of unusual thing, but actually all Champagne is pretty much always Blanc de Noir. So Champagne, the most common grape in Champagne is Pinot Meunier, and the second most common is Pinot Noir. Both are red grapes. So all Champagne, barring a tiny little bit, a few percent, which is made from Chardonnay, is actually made from red grapes. So Champagne is pretty much all Blanc de Noir. Your Moët and Chandon and your Taittinger and your Bollinger are all Blanc de Noirs because they're white wines from red grapes.
And we have a question from Joanne here asking, if you tasted this blind, would you have picked it out as a Blanc de Noir rosé?
It has a little bit of reddish berry fruit in there, which might just lead me to it. So if I didn't see the colour of it, I would be hedging that I get this just tiny little bit of kind of red fruit in there, and you would not get a red fruit flavour from, for instance, Chenin or Sauvignon or whatever. It's pretty unusual to get that red fruit character, although it is marginal. And if I wasn't paying attention, possibly not. It's a really light style, so yeah, possibly not. Yeah, it's quite a tricky one on that. Red wine. So if you want to reach for your Indaba Merlot. Okay, these wines are all screw tops. Screw tops, in my humble opinion, are the best way to close wines. They're the least failing type of closure. Again, pour yourself 1/2 inch to 1 inch. This is 2018. Bear in mind, these are all Southern Hemisphere wines, so they harvest in January and February. As was in the Northern Hemisphere, we harvest in the autumn, which is in September, sometimes moving into October. If it's a cooler climate, they need the extra time to ripen the grapes. But the south of France is early September, for instance, whereas they are usually around February time for harvest. So this is 2018. Merlot, medium depth of colour. Merlot is the most planted grape in Bordeaux. So claret from Bordeaux is mostly made from Merlot. There are other grapes in Bordeaux. Cabernet Sauvignon, Cabernet Franc, Malbec, Petit Verdot, and a few others, including port grapes, which have just been authorised. And in fact, Albarino, the Spanish grape from the Galicia in the top left-hand corner, fantastic grape, that has just been authorised in Bordeaux. So anyway, I digress. So Merlot is a Bordeaux grape variety, famous because it tends to be really fruity and it tends to have medium thickness of skin, not too thick a skin, so the tannins aren't too hefty. Cabernet Sauvignon tends to have it has thick skin, so it tends to produce quite tannic wines, quite dry, bitter tannins, and they tend to be for the wines that are aging, so you want to keep them. Whereas Merlot doesn't keep quite as well and as long, so it tends to be more approachable in its youth, i.e. a couple of years old. So spin it about, give it a sniff.
Maria thinks it smells amazing.
Good stuff. I'm just getting into the nose. Okay, a little bit of spice, red fruits, berries, mocha, chocolatey type thing, maybe spice going on, chocolatey, spicy. Yeah, it's quite good actually. Slurp, have a wee slurp. Okay, again, wash it all the way around your mouth. Remember the kind of areas, the zones of your mouth. End of the tongue is sugar. There is no sugar in this. Sides of the tongue is acidity. Good crisp acidity. Red wines need good acidity as well, so they need that acidity to keep them fresh. Middle of the palate is the fruit. And the top of the palate, the top of the tongue and towards the back of the tongue, If you rub it around, that's the tannin. So it does have tannins, because the difference between the white, the rosé, and this is fermented with the skins. So the juice and the skins are left in contact with each other for the whole time. So the grapes are brought in from the farm and they are sorted. So the rotten ones, the rubbish ones are all sorted and put aside. And that's done by hand on conveyor belts. So they chuck out the rubbish. And then it goes into a machine called a crusher destemmer, which is like a mangle. So it pops all the grapes and it falls through there. And then it goes into a kind of spinning cauldron thing, which takes all of the stalks away. So the grapes are smashed and the stalks are pulled off. So it's just the berries and the flesh and the pips that are put in the tank. And they're all massively kind of smashed up. So it's like a big liquidizer thing, but pulling the stalks off. You take the stalks off because they are absolutely hooching in tannins, by the way. So you don't really want the stalks. They make it kind of bitter, really tannic, quite unpleasantly sometimes. But if you want to keep it, if you want to make a wine that lasts for 20 or 30 years, leave the stalks in. So this, we don't want to do that. We want to drink it now. Go for it, Fraser.
We've got people agreeing that there's a nice chocolatey smell to the wine. And Grant's commenting on the fact that there are few or no legs on the wine. And
okay, if you spin it about,
illuminate us on that.
Okay, you spin it about. The legs on the glass. Well, actually, I've got a fair whack of. It's declaring 14%. I did look at the stat sheets on this wine earlier, and if it says 14%, it only needs to be within 0.5% either way, because they generally print the labels before the thing has got bottled. So they'll go to the printers and they'll say this wine was 14% in tank, but by the time it actually gets in the bottle, it could be 13.5 or 14.5. It could actually change either way. So this is declaring at 14%. And if you spin it about and then look at the trickly things going down, what is happening there, this is possibly a bit technical for a Friday night, but is the alcohol is evaporating off the sides of the glass and it's going into the body in the middle there, and it's just pooping off into the room. And these trickles down the side are just areas of water, and the water is sticking to itself and trickling down the sides of the glass. So the more it does that, it indicates that there's more alcohol evaporating off and disappearing out the glass, which is possibly not a good thing. Depends if you want more alcohol in your wine. But yeah, it's got a fair bit of legs there in mine. It's got the right amount of legs for a 14%. If you do this, if you get cask strength whiskey, and then you spin it about, it's really viscous and really thick, because alcohol is quite a gloopy liquid, and it really does produce enormous legs going down the side. So even whiskey or neat gin or any spirit produces enormous legs going down the side. You can see how much alcohol is in your glass just by looking by the formation of these legs. So anyway, I'll just have another slurp just to remind myself what it's like. Okay, really fresh, juicy red fruits. I get that. Yeah, I'm going back to my kind of chocolatey thing again. It does have a kind of chocolate mockery type character to it. Okay, that kind of, it's got a little bit of spicy thing going on. This is not barrel matured, but what they do with this, I've mentioned in other videos previously about oak. Okay, now this has not been put in oak barrels. A little bit it has. So they've stainless steel fermented it, and they've taken a few percent of that wine out of the stainless steel tank and they've put it into oak barrels. So it just has a tiny little hint of spicy oaky thing going on in there, and that's made it a little bit smoother, a bit more complex, and can contribute to the kind of toasty character, because barrels are toasted. When they're making the barrels, they put it over a gas burner, and the cooper will bend the staves over a gas burner. You'll get the hoops on because it makes the staves more malleable. So you bend the staves by heating them up and burning the inside, and that chars the inside of the barrel. And if you char the inside of the barrel and then you put wine in it, you get a little bit of this charring, spicy, oaky, smoky thing going on. What else? Go for it, Fraser.
We've got Sharon asking if the grapes for the red are also from different vineyards.
Yeah, they are. So this is Paarl, Schwartland and Stellenbosch. Now, Brewer Ratz, the guy who makes this one as well, I mean, he is a fantastic winemaker. He's a world-class winemaker. But there are advantages to having the grapes coming from one vineyard, because you tend to get the character of that vineyard. So the climate of that vineyard, the mesoclimate, that means the climate of that field and the way that it's inclined, and the microclimate, which is the climate around the plant itself. All of these things influence the flavour. So just as in a Scottish south-facing garden here, some bits of the garden are better at growing things than others, some vineyards are better at growing grapes than others. So if you've got a fantastic vineyard, the wine will taste of that vineyard. However, you are restricted to the flavour of that vineyard. So if you want to make a commercial style wine at £9 to sell to the Brits and the Scots, you want to have a broader spectrum of flavour. And the way to get a broader spectrum of flavour is to blend in different vineyards. So a certain vineyard will produce grapes with more acidity, and another vineyard will have more fruit, and another vineyard will have this kind of mocha chocolatey character. Chocolate blocks, for instance, some wines are released as chocolate blocks because they taste like that. And another vineyard will produce quite tannic grapes, and another will produce lower tannin grapes from exactly the same plant if you put it in the different vineyards. But if you blend from all the different vineyards, you can get something that is more homogeneous and more balanced in effect. So that's why people blend from different areas and different vineyards. So this is from a different, and so is the Chenin. The Lemberg is just one vineyard. They're one of the smallest estates in South Africa. So they are amazing. Yeah, if you want some really weird stuff, but really good, they do a grape that originally came from Ukraine and from Hungary called Haslevlu. And it is absolutely weird and wonderful stuff. So they do some really fantastic wines. But yeah, these two, both the Indabas are blends from different areas. Is that enough chat? Well, I hope you enjoyed the wines and maybe learnt something, and sets up your Friday evening with a little bit of educational drinking, which is always a good thing. Well, not always a good thing, but sometimes a good thing. If you want any of these wines, I've set up a discount code Facebook on my website, Facebook with a capital F, and you get 10% off until tomorrow night. So if you want to order any of these or any other wines on the back of this, then just type that code in to get your 10%, or just phone up if you want to phone up and just quote the tasting tomorrow to the warehouse, 0131 555 0222. There's 4 or 5 folk in tomorrow, so we can get your wines to you tomorrow afternoon if you're in Edinburgh. Sadly, in a couple of days if you're not.
We've got just time for one final question from Sharon, asking about if the Lemberg is fermented in concrete eggs.
Concrete eggs. Okay, it's not actually, it's stainless steel tanks, but I know what you mean by the concrete eggs. Concrete eggs, okay, they have discovered that, okay, fermentation is yeast consuming sugar and turning it to alcohol, and CO2 comes off as a byproduct. But the other thing in fermentation that comes off as a byproduct is heat, and it produces quite a lot of heat. And if you put your hand against the tank, it is bloody hot. You know, it goes up to 25, 30, 40 degrees. It can get really hot, these tanks. And what happens in the tanks is that you get a circulation, a convection going on in the tanks. And with straight-sided stainless steel tanks, the convection isn't very effective. Whereas what they've discovered, if you build the tanks like eggs, you get this convection going up the sides and it drops down the middle. So you get the circulation effect going on in the tanks. And you get much better balance, interaction, skin contact, mixing going on. It's an automatic mixing going on in these eggs. And these eggs are, you know, if you go back and you look at Grecian and Italian amphora, what shape are they? Weirdly egg-shaped. Okay, so all the really modern wineries these days, if you go into a really modern winery, you will see eggs, and you'll see ceramic eggs, you'll see pottery eggs, and they're quite big things, like room-sized eggs, or bigger, double the size of room, not quite house-size, but these enormous eggs. And I've seen stainless steel eggs now, and these are really tricky to make. You know, steel fabricators hate them, because to join an egg together, it's easy to wrap a piece of steel around and weld it and put a top and bottom on it. You know, a cylinder's dead easy to make, but an egg is not easy to make. So these guys don't like it, but it creates wine that is more interesting, more flavoursome, and it mixes the stuff inside, so you get a better extraction. You know, you get a bit more flavour coming out the grapes. So there you go.
Prices again as well.
Oh, prices, yeah. £9 for the Chenin, £9 for the Merlot, and £10 for the Rosé. So there you go. Well, I hope you enjoyed the tasting. I certainly have. I've got more tastings coming up next week. I'm doing South America next week, and I think France the week after, and I'll post July's next week. So we'll try and get some kind of forward planning going, so that you don't have to order a case of wine every week to keep up with the tastings. You can order the tastings in advance. Is that okay? If you've got any questions, just bung them on the Facebook thing, and I'll answer them for the next wee while, or over the next few days, or whatever, anything that occurs to you. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers.